A designer refuses to sell to a homeless man, but when he sees it's Elon Musk, he panics. The boutique Artisan Luxe sat on one of the most exclusive streets in Beverly Hills, its sleek black facade giving off an air of understated luxury. Inside, everything was meticulously curated: handmade leather bags, custom-tailored jackets, and couture pieces that could only be described as wearable art. It wasn't just a store, it was a statement. And at the heart of it all was Julian, the boutique's owner and chief designer. Known for his sharp eye and even sharper tongue, Julian had made a name for himself in the world of high fashion. His designs were coveted by celebrities and CEOs, but his reputation for being dismissive, bordering on cruel, toward those he deemed unworthy was just as well known. On this particular afternoon, Julian stood behind the counter, inspecting a custom jacket. The soft Italian leather gleamed under the boutique's ambient lighting. Satisfied, he placed it on a display rack and adjusted the collar with practiced precision. The chime above the front door rang softly, signaling a new customer. Julian glanced up, his eyes immediately narrowing at the man who had just walked in. The man's clothes were worn: an old jacket that looked like it had seen better days, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. A knit beanie covered most of his unkempt hair, and a few days' worth of stubble shadowed his face. He looked out of place among the boutique's pristine displays and luxury price tags. "Can I help you?" Julian asked, his voice laced with thinly veiled disdain. The man smiled warmly. "I'm just browsing, thanks." Julian crossed his arms, his eyes sweeping over the man from head to toe. "Browsing, huh? Our pieces are exclusive. Not exactly for window shopping." The man walked over to a display of custom leather jackets, running his fingers gently over the fabric. "These are nice. You're the designer?" Julian arched an eyebrow. "I am. Every piece in this store is handcrafted and one of a kind." "The jacket you're touching? Italian leather. It retails for $12,000. The man nodded, seemingly unbothered by the price. "Impressive craftsmanship." Julian forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you. But I'm afraid we're selective about who we sell to." The man raised an eyebrow. "Selective?" Julian leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "It's just that our clientele prefers a certain level of exclusivity. We're not a department store." For a brief moment, the man's eyes flickered with something unreadable: amusement, perhaps? Then he smiled again, his expression calm and collected. "I see. Well, thanks for the information." He turned and walked toward the door, his steps unhurried. Julian watched him leave, a smug sense of satisfaction settling in his chest. He had done the man a favor, really. Artisan Luxe wasn't for just anyone. It was a place for the elite, the tastemakers and trendsetters of the world. But as the door closed behind the man, Julian couldn't shake a strange feeling, a nagging thought that there was something familiar about him. The next day, Julian was back in the boutique, arranging a new display of limited edition bags, when the door chimed once again. This time, the man who entered was almost unrecognizable. Gone were the ragged clothes and knit beanie. Instead, he wore a tailored blazer over a crisp shirt, his shoes polished to perfection. His hair was neatly styled, and a confident air surrounded him like a second skin. Julian blinked, momentarily thrown off by the transformation. "Good afternoon," the man said, his voice steady and self-assured. "Remember me?" Julian frowned, trying to place him. His mind raced, then it clicked. His heart skipped a beat. It was the same man from yesterday. But now, something else became clear, something Julian should have recognized immediately. The man wasn't just anyone. He was Elon Musk. The realization hit Julian like a punch to the stomach. His breath caught, and his carefully constructed confidence began to crumble. He had seen Elon in the news countless times, watched interviews and read articles about his groundbreaking work in tech and space exploration. And now, here he was, standing in Artisan Luxe, waiting for Julian's response. Julian stammered, struggling to find the right words. "Mr. Musk, I didn't recognize you." Elon smiled, but there was a glint of something dangerous in his eyes. "It's funny how appearances can be deceiving, isn't it?" Julian's face flushed. I didn't mean to offend you yesterday. It was a misunderstanding. Was it? Elon said, his tone calm but cutting. Because it seemed pretty clear to me. You judged me based on how I looked and decided I wasn't worth your time. Julian opened his mouth to respond but found himself at a loss for words. Elon took a step closer, his voice dropping just enough to make Julian lean in. Here's the thing, Julian. I came here yesterday to see how you treat people. Not just your VIP clients, but everyone. And now I know. Julian swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. If I had known. Elon raised a hand, cutting him off. But you didn't. And that's the point. For a moment, the room was silent. Julian could feel the eyes of his staff on him, waiting to see how this confrontation would play out. Then, to his surprise, Elon's expression softened slightly. I'm not here to ruin you, Julian. I'm here to offer you an opportunity. Julian blinked. An opportunity? Elon nodded. But it comes with conditions. Julian stood frozen, struggling to process Elon's words. His mind raced, torn between fear and curiosity. An opportunity? After what had just happened, that was the last thing he expected. I don't understand, Julian said cautiously. What kind of opportunity? Elon leaned casually against a display table, his calm demeanor masking the weight of what he was about to say. Let me explain. I've built my career on finding potential in unexpected places, innovating where others thought it was impossible. When I walked in here yesterday, I wasn't just testing your customer service skills. I was seeing if you were ready for something bigger. Julian blinked. Bigger? What do you mean? Elon's eyes sparkled with that familiar energy, the kind that fueled SpaceX launches and Tesla's breakthroughs. I'm planning a new venture, a luxury fashion line that merges sustainable innovation with timeless design. It's going to change the way people think about fashion. And I want Artisan Luxe to be a part of it. For a moment, Julian's breath caught. A partnership with Elon Musk? The possibilities were endless. His mind flooded with visions of expansion, global recognition, and his boutique becoming a household name. But then Elon's expression turned serious. There's a catch, he said. If you want to be part of this, you'll need to change completely. No more gatekeeping. No more judging customers by their appearances. Every person who walks through that door deserves respect, whether they're a billionaire or just someone curious about what you offer. Julian's excitement faltered. Wait, you're asking me to change my brand's identity? This boutique was built on exclusivity. It's what makes it special. Elon nodded. I get that. But imagine how much more special it could be if it became known for innovation and inclusivity. You'd still be designing high-end, one-of-a-kind pieces, but you'd be expanding your audience. People want more than luxury, they want to feel valued. Julian glanced around the boutique, his eyes lingering on the carefully curated displays. This place was his life's work, a culmination of years of effort and sacrifice. Could he really change everything? Would his loyal clientele accept it? I'm not sure, Julian admitted. Opening the doors to everyone, it could ruin the brand's image. Or it could transform it, Elon countered. You have a chance to be a pioneer in the industry. But if you're not ready, I'll find someone else who is. The weight of Elon's words hung in the air. Julian felt his pulse quicken. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. He could refuse and keep things exactly as they were, safe but stagnant. Or he could take a leap of faith and risk everything for the chance to build something truly extraordinary. I need some time to think, Julian said finally, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Elon nodded, his expression unreadable. Take your time. But remember, opportunities like this don't come around twice. That night, Julian sat alone in his apartment, nursing a glass of wine and staring at the ceiling. His thoughts swirled in an endless loop, replaying every word Elon had said. Part of him felt insulted. How dare anyone suggest that he needed to change? His boutique was successful, his designs beloved by the wealthy elite. But then, another part of him whispered a truth he had tried to ignore for years. Business had been slowing down lately. His once loyal clients were moving on to newer, trendier brands. He had been clinging to his old ways, stubbornly refusing to adapt. Maybe Elon was right. The next morning, Julian arrived at Artisan Luxe with a renewed sense of purpose. He took a deep breath before unlocking the door, determined to embrace change, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Emily, one of his longest-serving employees, noticed the shift immediately. "You're in early," she said with a smile. "Something on your mind?" Julian hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Actually, we're going to make some changes around here." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Changes?" Julian nodded. "Big ones. Starting today, we're dropping the Exclusivity Act. Everyone is welcome here, no matter who they are or what they look like." Emily's eyes widened. "Seriously? What brought this on?" Julian chuckled. "Let's just say I had an eye-opening conversation with someone who made me realize how wrong I've been." The transition wasn't easy. At first, Julian struggled to let go of old habits. When a man in worn clothes wandered into the boutique one afternoon, Julian's instinct was to watch him like a hawk. But he caught himself, forcing a smile instead. "Welcome," he said, trying to sound warm and genuine. "Let me know if you need any help." The man nodded, looking pleasantly surprised. "Thanks. I'm just browsing." As time went on, the boutique's atmosphere began to change. Customers who had once felt unwelcome returned, bringing friends and family with them. Word spread quickly that Artisan Luxe had become more inclusive without sacrificing its signature style. Sales began to rise, and Julian's designs found a new, diverse audience. Julian found himself enjoying his work in a way he hadn't in years. He took time to chat with customers, learning their stories and discovering what they loved about his creations. His once cynical outlook softened, replaced by a genuine curiosity about the people who walked through his doors. Months later, Elon Musk returned. He entered the boutique quietly, dressed in his usual casual style. This time, there was no confrontation, no hidden test. He simply walked through the store, observing the changes with a satisfied smile. Julian spotted him from across the room and hurried over. "Elon, welcome back." Elon extended his hand. "Good to see you again, Julian. How's everything going?" Julian smiled, glancing around the bustling boutique. "Better than ever." "You were right. Opening the doors to everyone didn't ruin the brand. It saved it." "I'm glad to hear that," Elon said. "You've done something remarkable here. Not many people would have taken the risk." "It wasn't easy," Julian admitted. "But it was worth it." Elon nodded. "That's the thing about growth. It's always uncomfortable at first. But the reward is in the transformation." Julian gestured toward a nearby rack of new designs. "Let me show you what we've been working on. I think you'll like it." They spent the next hour talking about fashion, innovation, and the future of the boutique. Julian felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunity Elon had given him, but for the lesson that had come with it. As Elon prepared to leave, Julian walked him to the door. "Thank you," Julian said, his voice filled with sincerity. "For everything." Elon smiled. "Don't thank me. You did the work. I just gave you a nudge." Julian watched as Elon disappeared down the street, feeling a profound sense of pride and possibility. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of change. He welcomed it. And with that, Artisan Luxe was no longer just a boutique. It was a symbol of transformation, proof that it's never too late to grow. Over the next few months, Julian poured himself into his work with a renewed passion. He was no longer just a designer clinging to outdated notions of exclusivity. He had become a true innovator, blending his high-end designs with an inclusive spirit that resonated with a broader audience. The boutique flourished like never before. Sales soared, but more importantly, the store became a destination for people from all walks of life. It wasn't uncommon to see a tech startup founder browsing next to a high school art student or a tourist in sneakers admiring one of Julian's signature leather jackets. The energy in Artisan Luxe was different now. It felt alive. Julian embraced the change wholeheartedly, transforming his role in the business. He didn't just oversee the designs. He became a mentor to his staff, teaching them how to treat customers with empathy and respect. He listened to their feedback, encouraged their ideas, and created a workplace where everyone felt valued. One afternoon, while reorganizing a display, Julian heard the familiar chime of the front door. He looked up to see a woman hesitantly stepping inside. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a sweater, and clutched a worn leather handbag. She glanced around nervously, as if wondering whether she belonged there. Julian walked over with a warm smile. "Welcome to Artisan Luxe. How can I help you?" The woman looked surprised by his friendly tone. "I'm just looking. I've heard a lot about this place, but I wasn't sure if it was for me." Julian chuckled. "If you're here, it's for you. What's your name?" "Laura," she said softly. "Laura, take your time. If you have any questions, just let me know." As Laura browsed the racks, Julian watched her from a distance. He saw something of his former self in her, someone on the outside, unsure of whether they belonged. He made a mental note to check on her again before she left. Later that evening, after the store had closed for the day, Julian sat in his office, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. His thoughts drifted back to that first encounter with Elon Musk, the moment everything had changed. He couldn't help but smile at how far he had come. What had once felt like an unbearable challenge had become his greatest accomplishment. He had learned to embrace vulnerability, to admit when he was wrong, and to grow beyond his ego. His phone buzzed on the desk, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a text from Elon. "Elon, just saw the latest reviews. People are loving what you've done with the boutique. Proud of you." Julian leaned back in his chair, savoring the words for a moment before typing a reply. "Julian, thank you. Couldn't have done it without your push." "Elon, the push was yours to take. You did the hard part. We should catch up soon." "Julian, let me know when." The following week, Elon made good on his promise. He arrived at Artisan Luxe in his usual understated style: jeans and a blazer, a pair of sunglasses tucked into the collar of his shirt. This time, there was no grand reveal or hidden test. He was just there to catch up with an old friend. Julian greeted him with a firm handshake and a genuine smile. "It's good to see you." "You too," Elon said, glancing around the bustling boutique. "This place looks incredible." "Thanks," Julian said. "It's been a wild ride, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." They sat down in the lounge area near the back of the store, sipping espresso while they talked about everything from fashion trends to new developments in technology. "So," Elon said after a while, "any regrets?" Julian thought for a moment before shaking his head. "Not a single one. It was terrifying at first, changing everything I thought I knew. But in the end, it was exactly what I needed." Elon smiled. "I've learned that the best things in life usually come after the hardest decisions. It's about being willing to evolve, even when it's uncomfortable." Julian nodded. "You were right about that. And I've tried to pass that lesson on to my team. It's not just about what we sell, it's about how we make people feel when they walk through that door." Elon raised his cup in a toast. "To evolution." "To evolution," Julian echoed, clinking his cup against Elon's. As time went on, Artisan Luxe expanded even further. Julian opened new locations in cities across the country, each one maintaining the same balance of luxury and inclusivity that had become the brand's signature. His transformation didn't go unnoticed. Industry leaders invited him to speak at conferences, asking him to share his story. He never shied away from admitting his past mistakes, using them as a way to inspire others. "Change is scary," he often said during his speeches. "But staying the same can be even scarier. If you're not growing, you're stuck. And sometimes, it takes someone else to show you what you're capable of." One day, while preparing for the grand opening of his latest boutique in New York City, Julian received a surprise visitor, Laura, the woman who had hesitantly stepped into Artisan Luxe months earlier. She was different now, more confident, her eyes bright with excitement. She carried a large portfolio under her arm. "Julian," she said, beaming, "I'm so glad I caught you. I wanted to show you something." Julian gestured toward a nearby table. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Laura placed the portfolio on the table and opened it, revealing a collection of sketches, clothing designs that were bold, creative, and full of potential. "I've always loved fashion," she explained. "But I never thought I'd have a chance to pursue it seriously. Coming to your boutique inspired me. It made me realize that I belong in this world, too." Julian flipped through the sketches, nodding with approval. "These are fantastic," he said. You've got real talent? Laura blushed. You think so? I know so, Julian said. In fact, I think we should talk about how we can work together. You've got the vision, I can help you bring it to life. Tears welled up in Laura's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you're ready, Julian said with a grin. I'm ready, she whispered. That moment became another turning point, not just for Laura, but for Julian as well. He realized that his journey had come full circle. He had gone from being the arrogant designer who judged people based on appearances to someone who nurtured and empowered others. And as Artisan Luxe continued to grow, so did Julian's legacy, not as the gatekeeper of an exclusive world, but as a pioneer who proved that fashion could be both luxurious and welcoming. Months passed, and Artisan Luxe continued to thrive, its reputation reaching heights Julian never could have imagined. What had once been a boutique for the select few had become a symbol of transformation, a place where fashion met innovation, creativity, and most importantly, inclusivity. The industry took notice. Fashion magazines featured Julian's story on their front pages, lauding his evolution from a rigid designer to a trailblazing leader who had redefined the luxury fashion market. His designs remained as coveted as ever, but now they carried something even more valuable. A story of change and growth that resonated with people far beyond the fashion world. Julian's success didn't just change his business, it changed the way he saw himself. No longer burdened by his ego or the need to control every aspect of his brand's image, he felt free to experiment, collaborate, and embrace new ideas. One evening, Julian sat in his office, reviewing plans for an upcoming collection. His phone buzzed with a call, and when he glanced at the screen, a familiar name lit up, Elon Musk. Julian answered with a smile. Elon, how are you? Doing well, Elon said. Just checking in. I saw that Artisan Luxe made the cover of Vogue Business. Congratulations. Thank you, Julian replied. It's been a wild ride, but I'm grateful for every bit of it. You should be, Elon said. You earned it. By the way, are you free next week? I've got a project in LA, and I'd love for you to join me for dinner. I'd love that, Julian said. Let me know the time and place. After they hung up, Julian leaned back in his chair, reflecting on how far they had come since that fateful day when Elon had walked into his boutique disguised as a homeless man. It felt like a lifetime ago. The following week, Julian met Elon at a quiet restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. Unlike their previous meetings, this one felt more relaxed. Two friends catching up rather than a high-stakes business conversation. So, what's next for Artisan Luxe? Elon asked as they shared a bottle of wine. Julian smiled. I've been thinking about expanding into new markets, Tokyo, Paris, maybe even Dubai. But I want to do it slowly, the right way. No rush. Elon nodded approvingly. Smart. Sustainable growth is always better than a quick expansion. Exactly, Julian said. Besides, I've also been focusing on something else, mentoring young designers. There's so much talent out there, and a lot of it just needs a chance to be seen. That's fantastic, Elon said. Paying it forward is one of the most rewarding things you can do. Julian raised his glass. To second chances and new beginnings. To second chances, Elon echoed, clinking his glass against Julian's. One of Julian's most promising ments was Laura, the young designer who had walked into Artisan Luxe months earlier, unsure of whether she belonged. Under Julian's guidance, she had blossomed into a confident and innovative designer with a distinct voice of her own. Her first collection, co-designed with Julian, was met with critical acclaim. Fashion editors praised its bold yet wearable designs, and it quickly became one of the most talked-about collections of the year. At the launch event for the collection, Julian watched proudly as Laura greeted guests and fielded questions from the press. It reminded him of his own early days, back when he had first dreamed of making a name for himself in the fashion world. Laura spotted him across the room and made her way over, her eyes shining with excitement. Julian, can you believe this? People are actually buying my designs. I can absolutely believe it, Julian said with a grin. You've worked hard for this. You deserve every bit of success that's coming your way. Laura hesitated for a moment, then hugged him tightly. Thank you. For everything. I wouldn't be here without you. Julian felt a lump rise in his throat. "You would have found your way eventually," he said softly. "I just helped speed things up a little." As Laura returned to her guests, Julian stood back and observed the room, his heart swelling with pride. Seeing Laura's success was even more fulfilling than his own achievements. For the first time in his life, he understood the true meaning of legacy, not in the products you create, but in the lives you touch. Months later, Julian found himself invited to speak at one of the industry's most prestigious events, the Global Fashion Summit in Paris. Standing on stage before a packed audience of designers, journalists, and fashion enthusiasts, he felt a surge of nerves, but also an overwhelming sense of purpose. He began his speech with a story. His story. "I used to believe that exclusivity was the key to success," Julian said, his voice steady and clear. "That in order to protect my brand, I had to close myself off from anyone who didn't fit a certain image. It worked for a while. But eventually, it left me stuck, afraid to grow, afraid to change." The audience listened intently, hanging on his every word. "Then someone came into my life and showed me that real growth comes from opening doors, not closing them. From welcoming new ideas, new people, and new opportunities, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." He paused, letting the words sink in. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that we all have the power to change, not just ourselves, but the world around us. And sometimes, all it takes is a little push." The room erupted in applause, and Julian felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Back in Los Angeles, life continued at its steady, exciting pace. Artisan Luxe remained a hub of creativity and innovation, a beacon of what was possible when tradition met progress. Julian often thought about the strange twists of fate that had brought him to this point. He thought about Elon Musk walking into his boutique in disguise, about the moment of reckoning that had forced him to confront his own biases and flaws. He thought about the countless customers who had returned, surprised and delighted by the boutique's transformation. And most of all, he thought about the young designers he had mentored, each one a reminder that the future was full of possibility. One evening, long after the boutique had closed for the day, Julian stood at the front window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Emily walked up beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Late night?" she asked, handing him a cup. Julian took the coffee with a grateful smile. "Always." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the hum of the city providing a soothing backdrop. "You've done something incredible here," Emily said finally. "You've changed so many lives." Julian nodded, his eyes distant but warm. "Including my own." As he sipped his coffee, a feeling of peace settled over him. The boutique had grown beyond anything he could have imagined, but it had also grown into something far more meaningful. A symbol of second chances, of new beginnings, and of the limitless potential that comes from believing in people. And with that, Julian knew that the best was yet to come.